The 2022 NFL Draft has come and gone, and the Carolina Panthers have added not one, but two quarterbacks. Are either one of the future here in Carolina? Also filled in a couple of needs later on in day 3 of the draft. And how much better did the Carolina Panthers get over the course of this past weekend? We'll get into all that and more right now here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday through Friday, your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure to watch the show and subscribe to the show on YouTube. And it's very important that you do that because we have days like on Thursday of last week during the NFL Draft where I do live shows, and you don't want to miss any of those. So make sure to subscribe to the channel over there on YouTube, Locked On Panthers. And you can also check out all the podcasts wherever you get your podcasts from, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, wherever it is. You can listen to Locked On Panthers on the go wherever you go. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at Julian Council, where every single Friday I answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions. To participate, either at me at Julian Council, DM me at Julian Council, or leave a comment on any of those shows that week on YouTube, and I will get to it there on Friday for the weekly Friday mailbag. This episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And where we'll start today's show, as I just got back from being at a bachelor party in Lake Lure and Asheville, where honestly we spent most of our time in Lake Lure, had no connection at all. So I saw the tweets of people on Friday, even though I told you guys I wasn't going to be around, who were like, hey, Julian, where are you at? What's your thoughts on Matt Corral? What's your thoughts on what the Carolina Panthers are doing? Are they going to get Baker Mayfield? What's Sam Howell? What's going on? Guys, I was disconnected, even though I wanted to stay connected. There's no way. I didn't know what the Panthers had done until I think about 7 o'clock on Saturday night when I finally saw all the guys that they added. And you saw my tweets, my excitement about one of the players that they added because he went to my alma mater. And we'll talk about that shortly. But I was pretty disconnected from the draft. And right now, looking at things, I feel pretty good about it. And I'll get into how I feel about the draft as a whole, but going back to Friday night, I said on Thursday that I felt the Carolina Panthers were very likely going to add Baker Mayfield as their quarterback to come in here and compete with Sam Darnold. There would have been no competition. He would have won the competition, and he would have been a starting quarterback for Carolina in 2022. How good would they have been? I don't know. But the Browns, the big hangup was that the Cleveland Browns did not want to pay a certain portion of the $18.858 million contract that Baker Mayfield is due to earn this year with the fifth-year option. That's the same dollar amount that the Carolina Panthers are paying Sam Darnold. And obviously, if you're Carolina, you're not trying to pay too much of that after you're already paying Sam Darnold that kind of money. So Cleveland, whatever it came down to, they weren't willing to pay enough of that. And therefore, the Carolina Panthers had to move on. They sat there without a day 2 pick on Friday night. They could have gotten into the second round, but Scott Fitterer, who did not want to give up any future compensation, decided that he did not want to give a first or second round pick from next year to move up in the second round, or they could have taken a quarterback like Desmond Ridder, who's now a Falcon, or they could take someone else who's on the board there, and like Malik Willis, who is now a Tennessee Titan. Tennessee traded up to go get him, but they decided not to do that. They waited until the third round where they felt they could not wait any longer after watching Willis and Ridder go off the board. And, of course, Kenny Pickett going off the board on Thursday, being the lone first-round quarterback going to the Pittsburgh Steelers right down the hall from where he played with the Pittsburgh Panthers there in the ACC. They decided that, okay, fine. Matt Corral, that's our guy. We're going to go get him. They gave up their next year's third-round pick and a fourth-rounder this year to New England, move up to pick 94, and drafted Matt Corral out of Ole Miss. So Scott Fitterer, who said that they didn't want to give up any future compensation, now have given away their third and sixth round pick in 2023 to the New England Patriots. Was it worth it? I don't know. We'll find out moving forward and in the end. For me, when looking at Corral and just the decision to trade up and get him, I like that far more than I like getting Baker Mayfield and having him for potentially only one season and things possibly not working out here in Carolina. Now with Matt Corral, the Panthers have a young quarterback who they can try and develop and hope will be the future here in Carolina. Now, let me preface my feelings on Corral and what he could be here in Carolina by saying all this first. I love his toughness. I love what I saw out of this guy this past season at Ole Miss. Like I loved Matt Corral in 2021 at Ole Miss this past season. Like the Tennessee game where they were throwing mustard bottles and golf balls at Lane Kiffin at the end of it, and Corral is just toughing it out. I think he carried the ball like 20-something times that night, and to be able to drag his team across the finish line and win those games. 10-win season. Ole Miss has never had a 10-win regular season in their history until this past season with Matt Corral at the helm at quarterback, and then they played in the Sugar Bowl, where they don't play very often, and Matt Corral decided to play in it. And I listened a couple weeks ago to him on the Rich Eisen show mentioning why he decided to play and saying that these guys are the reason I'm even in the position to get drafted high. How am I not going to play in this game? Feel however you want to feel about players sitting out bowl games, whether they're meaningless or not. I just hate watching it as a college football fan, but I understand the decision that these guys are making, even though, like, what injury are they really going to sustain that's going to cost them their entire career? Like, yes, Jameson Williams tore his ACL, maybe falls back a little bit more in the draft, and had he not torn his ACL in a national championship game, mind you, at Alabama, still a first-round pick, modern medicine, probably going to be fine. But again, I understand why they did it. But I love that Matt Corral is, like, as a leader of this team, and as someone who would not be in a situation and his position without these guys, I'm not going to give up on my teammates and not playing this game. Yeah, he got injured. It was an ankle thing. No big deal. I know the freak out on Twitter that night. Corral's fine, and he's here in Carolina. Does he? If he hurts his ankle, does he go higher? If he doesn't, I mean, probably not. Like, this is just where he landed. This is not a deep quarterback draft. We knew all of that going into it, and really it's no surprise the way things ended up. Now, as far as Matt Corral in the future here in Carolina, I don't know what that's going to be. Like, he's a third-round pick. Traditionally, as we've seen the last couple of years, franchises in the NFL don't draft guys in the third round and have them as their anticipated future starting quarterback. That's just not how it operates. You get a guy in the first round, and that's typically who you expect to be the franchise. That's who you're handing the keys over to. I don't know if that's what's going to happen here in Carolina with Matt Corral. Yes, I understand what they've said, that we can take time with him. We can give him an opportunity to grow and learn and develop here in Carolina, which is a good thing. They needed to get a young quarterback that was their own, that they could mold and develop. That's something that I like with them doing this to Matt Corral. But am I sitting here now, like, jumping up and down thinking like, oh yeah, the Panthers have finally found their quarterback? No. With Ike Ekwonu on Thursday, that's how I felt about the left tackle position, because he was a top-rated prospect. Now, and he might maybe the best player in the entire draft. With Matt Corral, I don't feel that same way, even though I like the player. He's good athlete, strong arm, gets it out quick. I thought maybe Sam Howell is going to be the pick, and I've talked about a criticism of Howell out of North Carolina, a local kid who went to Sun Valley High School, holds on to the ball too damn long. Him and Corral both can take hits, but he takes some hellacious hits throughout his career in Carolina. So I'm fine with Corral being here. But I'm not going to sit here and be like, Panthers have their quarterback. They're done. Don't have to worry about that in the future. Like, now I understand that in Seattle, it worked out for Scott Fitterer when he was with the Seahawks with drafting Russell Wilson in the third round, months after they gave Matt Flynn a big deal. And the thought was in Seattle that Matt Flynn was going to be the guy. But then Russell beat him out. And of course, they went on to win a Super Bowl, go back to another one. And Russell's now in Denver and one of the best quarterbacks in the league. It's currently working for the Houston Texans, where they drafted Davis Mills in the third round last year, knowing that there was some issues with Deshaun Watson, who put in a trade request, wanted to be gone. They also brought in Tyrod Taylor. And had Tyrod Taylor not gotten injured last year, we probably don't even get to see Davis Mills. And Davis Mills might not be in a situation that he's in right now as the starter heading into 2022 down in Houston. So it's worked in the past. The greatest quarterback of all time was drafted in the sixth round in Tom Brady. So you don't necessarily have to draft a guy in the first round. I'm just saying, typically, when you get a quarterback and you expect him to be your franchise, he's not coming in the third round. Matt Corral absolutely could be the guy for the Carolina Panthers long-term, and I hope that he will end up being the guy for the Carolina Panthers long-term. Now, he does have some issues that they pointed out about his, I guess he got in a fight with Wayne Gretzky's son back in high school, had to change schools. He's from Ventura, California, ended up having to hit some issues of alcohol-related issues, which, hey, he's young, makes bad decisions. A lot of us have made bad decisions when it comes to alcohol. Also, he talked about his depression, which I don't see that as being a red flag. It's honestly a joke that I saw that was presented by Ian Rappaport and other people as like a bad thing that, hey, Matt Corral suffers from depression. A lot of people suffer from depression and go through things. At least he's been open and honest about it. And it's good because it helps encourage people to also be open about their own struggles. So I applaud Matt Corral for being able to do that. So I don't see that as a negative at all. Obviously, you hope that he doesn't have other issues off the field and he's going to be mature enough to come here in Carolina and succeed. That's the hope. But as far as will he be the long-term answer in Carolina, that's to be determined. And I could have said the same thing about a first-round quarterback because we see a guy on the roster right now, Sam Darnold. New York thought he was going to be their long-term guy. That lasted 3 years. Carolina hoped after trading for him last year that he'd be the long-term guy. That lasted 1 year. Now, he will be the starter, though, looking at it. And we'll have a further conversation about this heading into 2022. But Darnold's the starter. And everything you heard from Matt Rule and Scott Fitterer lets you know that he's a starter, that they want to bring Corral along slowly. So you're going to have to at least stomach one more season of Sam Darnold. And if he's terrible like he was last year, then maybe Corral gets an opportunity to play for Carolina. But right now, as I look at it, Matt Corral, developmental quarterback, the Panthers traded up for. Good decision, bad decision. That's really up for you to decide. But the Carolina Panthers, at the very least, added to the quarterback room and didn't just go try and get another reclamation project. They're doing it the old-fashioned way, drafting and developing. And I like that idea, even though I'm not quite sure the player will actually pan out and be the future here in Carolina. And down the road, he might be in the same situation, trying to find another quarterback. Now, it could be fine. He could be the hope for now. And if a better opportunity and solution presents itself in the future, what's holding the Carolina Panthers back from doing it? Like, they're bad this year. They get a top 10 pick. And Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, if those guys turn out to be the top 2 quarterbacks next year, are on the board and the Panthers can get them, who's to say that they won't? I don't know. But Matt Corral, welcome to Carolina. Hope for the best. Wish you the best, man. And we'll see what happens. But as far as I look at it right now, Sam Darnold likely to be the starter once again here in Carolina to start the 2022 season. Now, Matt Corral wasn't the only guy added this weekend by the Carolina Panthers. We'll talk about the rest of the Carolina Panthers draft class, including not just two, but 3 big-time needs Carolina Panthers fulfilled there on Saturday in day 3 of the NFL draft. Get into all that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NBA playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So on Thursday night, the Carolina Panthers found their future at left tackle in Ike Ekwonu. And on Friday, they traded up to hopefully bring in a future at quarterback in Ole Miss quarterback Matt Corral. They weren't done as day 3 of the draft took place, where they actually did have picks available. But they didn't have one sitting there in the 4th round until they traded 2 5th-round picks to their old friends up there in Washington for the number 120th pick overall in the draft. And also, I guess, what they gave up, they traded 2 5th-round picks to Washington for the 4th round and a 6th round, which was 189. So they traded away their 5th-round picks in order to draft Brandon Smith, linebacker out of Penn State. And you know who the head coach is here in Carolina and where he went to school. Matt Rule went to Penn State. But I love this pick, honestly. Like, think about Penn State. You always think about linebackers. LeVar Arrington, Sean Lee, Paul Posluszny, Micah Parsons, now with the Cowboys, and now Brandon Smith, who didn't have, I think, the career that he hoped to have at Penn State, but he was a 5-star recruit. Has great speed, great size, 6'3", 250, and he's someone I think can fit right there in the middle of the defense next to Shaq Thompson, hopefully, for the foreseeable future, the next 4 years. And after the incident with Damian Wilson, the still ongoing legal matter, we don't know what his future is here in Carolina. As I've already said in the past, that if any of what it's been accused by his ex-girlfriend is true, he should not be here in Carolina or really in the NFL. Now, Corey Littleton here on a 1-year deal. What's his future past this upcoming season? No idea. Carolina needed to add a linebacker through the draft, and they do that by trading up to get Brandon Smith out of Penn State. I think it's a great pick for the Carolina Panthers. Adds to a need that it fills a need that the Carolina Panthers had there at linebacker. Also, they drafted in the 6th round Amare Barno with that 189 pick that they were trading their 2 5th-round picks to get from Washington. Amare Barno from Virginia Tech, edge rusher, about, let's see, his size was 6'6", 235, so kind of the similar frame that we have with Brian Burns, and also fills a need as he had 6.5 sacks back in 2020, only 3.5 sacks last year playing with the Hokies, or playing for the Hokies. Fulfills that need when you lose Hassan Reddick, who's now gone up to Philadelphia back home to play with the Eagles. Another edge rusher for the Carolina Panthers. Now, will he be the starting edge in the future? I have no idea. Of course, Frankie Louisville will get the first crack at that. Marquise Hayne will also be a situational pass rusher for the Carolina Panthers, but they add someone at on the edge to be a part of that outside line. He's probably going to be an outside linebacker, play a part of that position group. Jeez, cannot talk today. Also in the 6th round, at pick 199, they get Cade Mays out of Tennessee, Knoxville kid. First started out at Georgia for a couple years, then went to go play at Tennessee with his brother Cooper Mays, former 5-star recruit as well, big-time player. Tennessee's offensive line for years was an absolute shambles, but when you get a guy like him, Trey Smith, who's now with the Kansas City Chiefs, both of those guys, former 5-star recruits. I think Cade Mays, when I was talking about the other day, like if they want to add more to this draft, and I was asked about it, like what should they be targeting later on in the draft? You can never have too much depth on the offensive line. As we know, Bradley Bozeman signed for 1 year. No idea what the future is for him. There's talks that maybe Brady Christensen, who likely is going to start at left guard this year, could play center in the future. Now you have Cade Mays, you have Deontay Brown, 2 SEC pedigree guys there in the inside of that offensive line that potentially could start for you down the road. And of course, this is the Carolina Panthers, coached by Matt Corral. So of course, they had to go out there and get a player from Baylor, Kalon Barnes, cornerback, drafted in the 7th round, 242. And as I say, typically with any 7th round pick, congratulations. Will you be on the roster? I don't know. But so far, Stan Thomas Oliver has made it, and Phil Hoskins out of Kentucky last year have both been on the roster for the Carolina Panthers. Stan Thomas Oliver more of a contributor on special teams, and Hoskins hasn't gotten an opportunity yet, but I think he will have an opportunity to be able to be someone who could potentially be a part of that defensive tackle rotation for the Carolina Panthers. So as far as the draft class, Ike Ekwonu, love that pick. Matt Corral, I might not be as giddy and excited as other people. I don't hate that they did it. It makes sense to get a quarterback in-house and needed to do something. This is not something that's going to push, I believe, Sam Darnold out of the starting job for 2022, which might not have people happy. Maybe people believe that Matt Corral is going to be the guy who's going to push out Sam Darnold this upcoming season. We'll see. If Darnold plays like he played last season, then yeah, Matt Corral absolutely deserves an opportunity, but he's got to beat out PJ Walker first. So we'll see how that all plays out. He'll be on the roster. Don't worry about that. But this is way more. This is not a Will Grier kind of pick, where Cam was still the guy here, Carolina long term. I know there's fans out there being like, oh, Will Grier's here to replace Cam Newton. Okay, well, that never happened. And Will Grier's never really caught on anywhere to be a starting quarterback so far in the NFL. For Matt Corral, he's going to be given the opportunity to be a starting quarterback here in Carolina. Just depends on how he develops and how ready he is for the NFL game. But right now, I don't think that's going to happen, at least for the start of the 2022 season. We'll see how things play out. Brandon Smith out of Penn State fills a need there at linebacker, needed to get a linebacker, and you get a guy who has a 5-star background coming out of high school, played in the Big Ten at Penn State, a university that's known for producing top-tier linebackers. Amare Barno, edge rusher. Cade Mays, another offensive lineman. Kalon Barnes adds to the cornerback room. Did you need another corner? Who knows? No harm in doing that. So overall, totally fine with that class. Now that the Carolina Panthers get better this weekend, I don't know. We'll get into that here, though, in just a minute here on Locked On Panthers. Summer is coming, and with summer, you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations. Throw them in your bags, in your kids' backpacks. Make sure that everyone has a bar so you are fueled for all your summer adventures. The best part about Built Bars, they're healthy and delicious. No more sacrificing delicious food for health. With Built Bar, you can have both, and it's easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order now. All Built Bars and Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means that with Built Bar, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. Go to Built.com right now and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your first order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Heading into the draft this week, Matt Corral said he wanted to go into the locker room and tell his team after 3 days that they got better. So did the Carolina Panthers, after 3 days of this past weekend with the 2022 NFL Draft, get better? Well, you look at it, the first pick that they had with every single offensive player on the board for them, they did not have to reach as all 3 of the top tackles were there. And it took Ike Ekwonu out of NC State, a Providence Day alum and his Charlotte kid. And I'm so happy to have him, as y'all saw the other day, fired up about it. Starting left tackle, without a doubt, starting out the season. At least I hope that's what the Carolina Panthers do. Thinking about it, like last season, the Carolina Panthers went into the year with their left tackle was Cam Irving. Their left guard is Pat Elflein, 2 guys who ranked among the worst players over the last 3 years in the NFL on the offensive line, according to Pro Football Focus. that was the left side of your offensive line. Then you had Matt Paradis at center, who had really struggled his first year at Carolina, coming off of an injury. In 2020 was better than last year. Was not all that great. I haven't even really seen him sign anywhere so far, so I think he's still a free agent out there currently. Then you had John Miller at right guard, who again remains a free agent, who was not good in the preseason and then ended up not being very good at all for the Carolina Panthers last year as he battled through injuries and just poor performances. And then on the right side, you had Taylor Moton, who the Panthers had just extended, and that was your offensive line. Now looking at it a year later, you still have Taylor Moton. You had Austin Corbett at right guard on a 3-year deal coming off a Super Bowl win for the Los Angeles Rams. At center, you have Bradley Bozeman or Pat Elflein, but I'm going to say right now Bradley Bozeman. At left guard, you have Brady Christensen, and at left tackle, you have Ike Ekwonu. That is miles better than what the Carolina Panthers had a year ago. And they got better on the offensive line, and they got better by just drafting Ike, because had they not done that, you're looking at Brady Christensen at left tackle, Pat Elflein at left guard, or Bozeman at center. You can flip either one, Corbett, and then Taylor Moton. Now that you add a top-notch tackle like Ekwonu, you don't have to play Pat Elflein on that offensive line as a starter when he's not capable of being a solid starter in the National Football League, at least at the guard position. Now you have it figured out with Christensen there at left guard instead, and an Ike Ekwonu there. 2 young guys on the left side of the offensive line. So you wonder about just the youth there. But long-term, the Panthers should be just fine. So yeah, they got better in the offensive line. Then by adding Matt Corral, your quarterback room, I don't know how much better it really got. You add another option. I think immediately how much better is the Carolina Panthers quarterback room? I guess they're better just because they added somebody with it being Matt Corral. But I don't know. We'll see what it looks like in the future. He'll get an opportunity to be the starting quarterback here in Carolina. I'm just not looking at that as a immediate fix in 2022. And as we had the conversation leading up to the draft, there's not a single guy who was in this draft class that was going to come in, at least in my opinion, a lot of opinions of folks out there, that was going to come in and start immediately for the team and lead them to success. And for the team, meaning the Carolina Panthers, I didn't see these rookies having a massive impact for the Carolina Panthers in 2022 and potentially saving Matt Rule's job if his job is in jeopardy. Because after last week's press conference with David Tepper, seems like Matt Rule might, get more of an opportunity here. Of course, they have to improve and show that on the field this year, which so far through free agency and the draft, they definitely have improved their roster. They needed another linebacker. Damian Wilson may never play a snap for the Carolina Panthers. Corey Littleton might not play here past 2022. You needed to find someone young who could be in the middle of that defense and start with Shaq Thompson in the future. And I think they found that in Brandon Smith out of Penn State. Might not start this year, at least to start off the season, but I definitely expect him to be a starter in 2023. That's a good thing. You add more depth to the offensive line with Cade Mays. You add another defensive end or edge rusher in Amare Barno. And then you add another corner in Kalon Barnes. The Panthers got better this weekend. I think it's really that simple for me. Like, you get a left tackle, that's fixed. Maybe you got your quarterback of the future. I'm going to wait and see on that. And I think it's fair to do that too, because Matt Corral is going to be given the opportunity to just develop. And things could change. When I say this about what's to stop the Panthers from drafting a quarterback next year, if they're right there in the first round, have an opportunity to take a swing, like, think about it. And now Fitterer will be here. So that's important. But they bring in a new head coach, and that new head coach has some influence. Things like, hey, man, I really like this guy at Alabama. I like this kid at Ohio State. Or if Spencer Rattler bounces back, I like this guy down in Columbia, South Carolina, and he's a first-round talent compared to the guy that we got last year, why not? So we'll see. I hope that's not the case for Matt Corral. I want Matt Corral to have an opportunity. I like him. I love what he did last year at Ole Miss and what potentially he could do in the National Football League. I'm just not going to sit here and say that I'm 100% sold that Matt Corral is going to be the future quarterback here in Carolina. I think he'll start games in Carolina. At least he'll get an opportunity to start games. But will he be the guy that stabilizes the position for the next 10, 15 years? I'm going to wait and see on that one. But I don't hate it at all. I don't hate that. I like that better than getting Baker Mayfield, especially for a price point that you didn't want. And the Browns are playing hardball. Don't know what they're going to do now with Baker. Sucks for him. He had an opportunity to actually play next year. Now, I don't know what they're going to do or what he's going to do. And Scott Fitterer said, we're done. Veteran quarterback market, we're out. So the Panthers got better this weekend. And honestly, they got better because they added Davis Cheek from Elon. And that's one I was really excited about, to be honest with y'all. Y'all know I'm an Elon alum. Davis Cheek, played at Butler High, Charlotte guy, likely, I bet, grew up a Panthers fan. at some point in the next couple of weeks. I don't know how interested you are on undrafted free agents, but I'm going to be selfish. You want to have this kid on the show. We've already connected. I'm excited to talk to him. It's funny. It goes back to how just life goes. Going to Elon, I took this class, sports and media, with Dr. Glenn Scott, who's my favorite professor there. Him and Tom Nelson were my favorite professors at Elon. And Dr. Scott asked me a couple years ago, back in 2019, back when I was working at WFNZ, to just face the Skype, I guess. That's what we used to use before the pandemic, and now we all use Zoom. He asked me to Skype into his class and just talk to him about, I was doing my career and just working in media and sports and all that kind of stuff. So I did that. And in that class was Davis Cheek, who asked me a question about, did I pay attention to Elon sports? I was like, yeah, man, I know, you got the whole knee issue that sucks because towards ACL, Elon was the pits. They were terrible when I was there in school. Awful. Then they get Curt Cignetti, who's a former Saban assistant, now the head coach at JMU. He turns around the program. They go to the FCF playoffs. They host a playoff game. They never won one, but they got to the playoffs one year. They were good for 2 years, and Davis Cheek was a quarterback. And I love that he was a local guy. Went to Butler. That turned out to be a pretty good powerhouse high school football team here after Independence kind of fell down over the last couple of years. Now I think Myers Park's like the school. Them in Chambers High, formerly known as Vance. Those are the top two schools in the state, in the area right now, and in the state. But it was really cool to see Davis Cheek have that career at Elon, and now the Panthers don't just add a former Charlotte guy and Providence Day alum, Ike Ekwonu, but they add Davis Cheek, who I understand the how these things work out with undrafted free agents that likely, especially at his position, that probably not going to make the roster. But if you get a practice squad guy here for Carolina and someone they could continue to develop along with Matt Corral, I think it's a good thing. I'm hoping the best for him. For me, I want him to end up being the Panthers starting quarterback and to win Super Bowls here because he's the Elon guy and also a Charlotte guy. He's got that 704 number. Never trust anyone with a 980 number, by the way. Don't trust it. 980, can't trust those people. But so that was one of the UDFAs added. I guess I should go over the list of the other ones that the Panthers added on Saturday and on Sunday. I think there was 5 wide receivers that they brought in. Let's see, 13 players that they've added to via the undrafted free agents. So we have tight end Josh Babbitts. I don't know, some dude from North Dakota State. Got a linebacker out of Boston College, Isaiah Graham Mobley. Got a safety from Penn State and Drew Hartlaub. Wide receiver from Virginia and Rashawn Henry. Got a wide receiver from Eastern Washington. You know who went to Eastern Washington? Cooper Kupp. Cannot pronounce his name. Talolo Limu Jones. They got a running back out of Penn State and John Lovett. Defensive tackle out of Kentucky, Marquand McCall. A linebacker out of Fresno and Aaron Mosby. Wide receiver out of Florida State and Andrew Parchment. Wide receiver out of Miami, really Oklahoma, and Charleston Rambo. Linebacker out of Illinois and Kalen Tolson. And a wide receiver out of Utah State, Derek Wright. So, and of course, Davis Cheek, the quarterback out of Elon. Those are your undrafted free agent signings right now. Panthers have rookie mini camp here at the end of next week from May 13th through 15th, where probably around that time I'm going to try and talk to Davis Cheek, the new quarterback of your Carolina Panthers and an Elon alum such as myself. But that's all I have for y'all today. Was playing hurt. Don't know if this is my best pod. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. But we'll talk more about Matt Corral, what his future will look like here in Carolina. We'll probably get more in depth on that on Tuesday's show. And what's the impact for Sam Darnold? If Sam Darnold has a great year next year and finally plays like a number 3 overall pick, does he get an extension? Is he the guy here in Carolina? I don't know. We'll see what happens. Honestly, part of me thinks that might be the best thing for the Panthers. I don't know. But we'll get into that conversation here on Tuesday. But in the meantime, follow the show on YouTube. Subscribe to it. Subscribe also. Rate, review, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all those podcasting platforms. And follow me on Twitter at Julian Council, where every Friday, again, I answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions. So that's it for me today. So stay safe, keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Tuesday, where hopefully I'll be a little bit better.